Welcome to the Oddsbreakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 28 of 2026. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neil. You can follow me on X at OBKiev. Follow us at The Oddsbreakers. Follow us on social media / The Oddsbreakers. This episode is being brought to you by FanDuel Sports, a proud partner with March Madness and the NCAA Tournament. If you'd like to support the Oddsbreakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, become a member. Pick any for winning cappers. Get the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. If nothing else, please visit the Oddsbreakers and become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. We are rolling into the Sweet 16, my friends, and today I am going solo to go over the Thursday games. I tried to get a few appointments. Everybody's been booked up. A few guests is what I'm trying to say. And I actually have been inflexible as well because I'm quite busy this week. Lots of capping to do. It's not just the NCAA tournament. We also have the NIT finishing out. Been looking at some of that. We have UFC. We have the CBI, the Crown, they should call it actually. I believe the name is now the Crown, which is going to be all Power 5 teams, which is a little strange to me, but okay. And just some plenty of basketball before the season ends. So I'm excited to talk to you about Thursday and give you a few free plays and best bets for this podcast. Also, want to talk a little bit about the fact that we don't have any Cinderella teams, as well as how bad the dogs performed in the tournament here. You know, the problem is that you had a lot of favorites cover. And, you know, it hurts I guess the contrarian bettors, the ones that considered are more sharp in a way. You know, it's funny. We all pick our spots. I probably was on just as many favorites as dogs, or maybe more favorites, because I had 3 good days out of 4. And it's kind of hard to say betting a dog is the sharper play these days. Since Friday, favorites in the NCAA tournament are now 24-2 straight up, 19-7 ATS. Okay, so it has been kind of a big run from the favorites here. Not only straight up, but ATS. Double-digit favorites so far in the 2026 NCAA tournament is 20-1 straight up and 13-8 ATS. The only double-digit favorite to lose outright was Wisconsin. According to John Ewing, favorites in general are 30-22, 58% against the spread. I guess there's some pick'em games here. Texas was probably the biggest one to get through all 3 games, you know? So, yeah, I think that the favorites have definitely shown up. And the question is, will the dogs show up in the next round? Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. First of all, if you hear in the media, they're complaining about NIL. And maybe that has a factor of why these Cinderellas are not getting through. But was it really NIL that made Santa Clara play against 8 people, 5-on-8? Clearly should have won that game by 10 to 15 points without terrible officiating. Was it High Point that got their big guy in foul trouble, or was it just calls being gone one way? I've heard some of that. I didn't watch the High Point Arkansas game. But it wouldn't shock me either way. I see a lot of complaining on both sides for that one. I think it's networks are involved as well as NIL money, so you can't really forget about that. But guess what? The guys on the networks are not allowed to talk about that, right? They won't be back if they talk about that. You know, Charles Barkley gets away with a lot of stuff, but once he actually insults CBS or the officiating in the game too much, and they try, man. You can tell they're bothered that they can't bring it up. They won't be welcome back. And that's the real reason, I think, that some of these Cinderellas are not getting through. Also, definitely some NIL. Just gutting some of these smaller programs in the off season. That kind of sucks. I honestly wish there was a limit to NAL. But if you put a limit to it, you're going to get what you had before, money under the table. I say just put a limit and make the punishment bigger. 4 years not ineligible for postseason. Not eligible. How about that? A real death penalty for people that get busted under the table. That's what it's got to be. And, otherwise, it just doesn't matter. And you're just going to eventually get only small conferences in football, a Big Ten and an SEC. That's it. That'll be your Division I. And maybe in the NCAA tournament, you might not even see these small colleges able to participate, because I think they really screwed up letting the Wild Wild West happen in this NCAA tournament. But coming to the Sweet 16, the fact that schools with more upside, like Arkansas, is through there, some other schools like Nebraska, they were really good. Won like 24 in a row or something like that in the beginning of the season. You don't have small schools having those big upsets like a Cal Baptist came back against Kansas. You don't have Siena in the tournament anymore, even though they played so well against Duke. You're going to see smaller spreads, somewhat smaller. But then again, I think that the quality of some of these teams like Arkansas, like Alabama, Tennessee, St. John's might show up this week. You might see that show up this week. And I find that really interesting. Illinois, 3.5-point dog at Houston. Yeah, that is at Houston. So I actually think this could be a week of dogs coming on in. But I made a few bets, and I definitely want to go over them with you very shortly here and talk about Thursday's games before our show with Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk on Friday begins. Before I talk about that, I want to remind you our Survivor Sweet 16 is available at Splash Sports. It's called the Sweet 16 Survivor. Yeah, very very unique there, right? But we also have it on our site at theoddsbreakers.com, and you are back in. If you are eliminated, I'm very eliminated. I still have a few left in the beginning survivors. I'm getting in 174 people so far in, and we're not even close to the start of the tournament yet, or the restart of the Sweet 16 yet. I would say get in this if you can. Only $20 an entry, and go as far as you possibly can. Possibly taking out a few grand. That would be really fun to cash in this one. So we have that available at theoddsbreakers.com. All right. Well, let's talk about the Thursday games then, shall we? I will also have plays on the NIT. There's one I'm eyeing up now, waiting for some more movement. But that will be reserved for subscribers that came in March, and that's been with us through and through. So I have to reserve some of that for them, but I'm also going to give you some of my thoughts and a few plays for this tournament coming on Thursday. What's interesting is actually I'm waiting on a lot of stuff to come in as well. I want line movement, and I think there's going to be movement towards the favorites. We'll start with Texas versus Purdue. Purdue minus 6.5, moving towards 7, total 148.5. This is an interesting game. Texas all of a sudden went from looking like a team that didn't deserve to make the tournament to playing either minds, beating BYU and Gonzaga. I will say both BYU and Gonzaga had injuries, significant injuries, but Texas, it's Sean Miller coming in. That's when you think about a coach, one with all that NCAA tournament experience from Arizona, from, I think, Xavier. Yeah, he comes in to Texas and makes the Sweet 16, but he actually had to win 3 games coming on in. But Texas, the reason they won is they stepped up their defense. But can they continue this madness? Want to be a professional handicapper? Check out theoddsbreakers.com, where we now have live odds and pick tracking. click on Live Odds Pick Tracking, and you can start tracking your picks, partnering with Tally Site. Once you develop records and a following, you can use that information to move to the next level, gaining all that experience in your sports betting career. Make sure you check out Live Odds and Pick Tracking at theoddsbreakers.com, partnering with Tally Site. They only ranked 81st in defensive efficiency. Gotta say, the party's gonna end sometime for these guys. Neither of these teams are consistent, Purdue or Texas. But it's just so hard to have a great stance on what to expect here when Texas has such a large sample size of failure. Purdue has failed too, but it wasn't that often. And they have got to play one less game, and they're poised right now to face the winner of Arkansas versus Arizona. And they've been there before, and so has Matt Painter. Just like Sean Miller, but Purdue has got some serious studs at guards on this team. You know, that's kind of what has been driving them, and they're finishing games. Braden Smith has not been shooting all that well, but he's like the best assist guy out there. Trey Kaufman-Wren playing a little bit better defense. Fletcher Lawyer, 3-point specialist at 43.3%. CJ Cox got injured last game. He's playing this game. You know, a shooting guard at 38.4% from three. You know, this Purdue team is solid. And they also got a 7'4" dude in Daniel Jacobson that comes in to give Oscar Clough a break. You know, Purdue, not super deep, but kind of deep enough. Situation where the spread kind of got too small, in my opinion. And I don't know why it did, but this 6.5 is a number I have to take. Ken Pom has this in an 8-point spread. Bart Torvik has this in 9.7 point spread. At 6.5 or 7, I like Purdue a lot. And I'm taking Purdue for your first play of this episode. Minus 6.5 for 2.5 stars.
Have you found Jesus yet, Doug?
I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for him, sir.
Our friends at FanDuel still have this at minus 6.5 and a total of 148.5 at FanDuel Sports. Iowa versus Nebraska. Nebraska minus 1.5, total 133.5. This is certainly a matchup that I did not expect. I cannot believe they both got through. I knew Nebraska had a chance against Vandy, but I just did not know Iowa had a chance against Florida. And I thought Florida would win outright. I didn't want to lay the points, especially with what Florida did, having to score in the hundreds against a small team. I thought that was kind of bunk, dude. You just had to put on 114 against Prairie View A&M. Screwed up that whole prop that they like to put out. Will there be a blowout of more points? I think it was like 45 or something. Well, they won by over 50. And then they shit the bed against Iowa. Almost like I'm actually happy Iowa won because of that. But I'm also happy for the Big Ten having 6 teams in this thing. You know? But this is a great game because it's such a close spread. These teams played in the past this year, not long ago. Both teams will have near proximity matchup advantage, yet Nebraska is going to have some advantages from beyond the arc against a poor 3-point defense in Iowa, ranking 251st on Ken Pom. You can see here on Haslametrics, if you pull up the matchup stats, field goal percentage and 3-point percentage go to Nebraska, while near proximity is somewhat of a push, although Nebraska has a little bit better of a showing in that category. So, in the Hawkeyes game versus Florida, you can tell the better team was losing most of that game. And if there was 5 more minutes in that game, the Gators would have pulled it through. Now, would the Gators pull through against Nebraska? Probably too. But when Nebraska did play Vanderbilt, who just beat Florida in the SEC Conference Championships, it's easy to see that Nebraska was better than Vanderbilt that game. I have Florida better than Nebraska, but not by a hell of a lot. And I have Nebraska and Vanderbilt pretty darn close. And I regret not betting Nebraska. But what I will say right now is I think Nebraska should win this game. I like Ben McCullum over there. But I do also, I respect him enough to not really want to lay points. And you can get this on the money line right now at minus 128. And I think that's the best play, is because I just think that there absolutely could be some last second stuff in this game. You know, these teams split when they played during the regular season. One went way under the total at about 108 points. One went over the total. 259 points at overtime, but they actually went over the total before overtime happened by about 5-6 points. I remember it because I bet the under and lost. Do I want to bet the under and lose here? No. I don't know what you're going to get here. I assume I lean the under because of the importance of this game to make it to the next level. Both these teams know that they have a shot at the Final Four now, you know, and it's a huge spot. But this is more of a letdown spot also for Iowa, you know, and I have to respect that. And I think Nebraska wins the game. Nebraska money line, minus 128, 2.5 stars. Next game, Arkansas versus Arizona. This game went up for a little bit, up to 167.5. Now it's back to 166.5 for a total. I mean, you have Arizona as the 8.5 point favorite. You got a little pressure on Arkansas at our friends at FanDuel, plus 8.5 total. Juice minus 115. Money line would be plus 285 for Nebraska for Arkansas. This is an interesting game as Arizona best all around team. I'll still say, but they didn't look great in the tournament so far. I did not like the way they played against Utah State. Arkansas had the best college basketball player in Darius Acuff, but the problem that I have with this game is I just do not know how much the number 2 defense in the country in Arizona can stop and slow Darius Acuff. Now, when Arizona played Utah State, they allowed some easy layups there. Even though it went under, they just kind of allowed it. Well, that's what Darius Acuff does, and he takes wide open threes. Arizona also lets a few threes go every once in a while. Now, I'm not saying like there's some massive bad 3-point defense. They rank 39th in 3-point percentage allowed. They're first in total effective field goal percent. But I just think, you know, the number is what the great equalizer is, and this is what they're talking about. We're talking about 8.5 points here. I see a path for them, especially if Arkansas's role players can step up like Trayvon Brazile and Malik Thomas. Now, will starting center Nick Pringle be back for the Hogs? I think yes. So that's another big inside guy that could really give them some help. Malik Thomas is a 3-point specialist. Even Trayvon Brazile's been playing well in the tournament. So this is just, you know, I've talked myself almost to play betting Arkansas, but I just don't trust them completely as they've had some serious problems themselves. I'm going to lean Arkansas plus 8.5, and I also have a premium play on the total. Illinois versus Houston. Houston minus 3.5 total, 139.5. Imagine having the number 2 offense in the league and Ken Pom square off against the number 4 defense in the league. Well, that should be fireworks, but unfortunately, the pathetic committee had to give Houston a home game here. You know, at the Toyota Center in Houston, what is going on with that? I mean, I complained about it already a little bit, but now that it's come to fruition here, why does Houston deserve this when they, A, didn't win the regular season? They lost 6 games this year. And B, they didn't win the Big 12 conference tournament. They have no shares in the Big 12. They have some great losses: Tennessee, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Arizona, and Kansas. But so what? Getting a number 2 seed at home would have really affected Florida too if Florida made it. It was completely unfair and stupid for the committee to do. This is not the best overall 2 seed. You know, I thought UConn was the best overall 2 seed. You know, they have big wins against Illinois, Kansas, team that, you know, beat Houston, Florida. But whatever. Now we're in this situation and it's tough. I mean, this is a tough game. I struggle with this game. I have seen Illinois get cold at times. They struggle on the road before. Illinois only has one top 10 win with 3 top 10 losses. Houston is actually worse than that, though. No top 10 wins and 2 losses to Arizona. Once at home, once on neutral court, and a loss to Iowa State. Usually when at home, though, the total of these games go under when it's a defensive, slow-paced teams. Yet I'm going to say that Houston's offense woke up since that Arizona loss in their tournament. I have this game Houston -1 or pick 'em, but this is in the Toyota Center, so you got to give them at least 2 points for that. Houston -3 is probably the correct number, maybe -2.5. I have a slight lean to Illinois, but I have no reason to rush into this. I also lean the under a little bit, but I cannot bet this. I can live bet this. Houston goes up 10. Illinois goes up 5. Something like that. I don't know. I think Illinois has the size to compete with Houston. Because if you look on KenPom, height, experience, Illinois is the tallest team. They're the tallest team. Their guard is 6'6" in Wagler. They got 4 guys that are 6'9" and above. This team is huge. So I'm really looking at Illinois. And I think the public's going to jump in more on Houston. If I can get a 4.5 or something by tip, that would probably constitute a play. But as of right now, it's a waiting game. Remember, I'm kind of thinking dogs here. And we're going to talk more about these come our show with Marco D'Angelo tomorrow morning, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. If you want to check out our YouTube channel, please hit the like button and follow us on YouTube. Grow that thing. And, that way you can comment. You can ask a question. You can say whatever the hell you want to us while we're podcasting, while we're recording and talking about these wonderful games. The NCAA tournament's almost over. But come next week, I'm going to be working on the NFL's Pythagorean win total. Probably figure out a few more NFL season win total plays, maybe a few draft plays. College football, always in the back of my mind. I just made some baseball plays today for premium subscribers. So I'm excited about that as well. If you remember what Will gave out, that was one of them. Will and Sean gave it out. But I'm excited for a little baseball, but I'll tell you this. You always get super pumped up by July. But the 4th of July, you are ready for some football. And we also love betting the NFL preseason. We are going to be ready for football starting immediately because that's where we get all the line value. To recap, Purdue -6.5. Nebraska, pick 'em -130. 128 you can get now. I'll even call it -130 because that's what I got when I bet it. Thank you so much for listening to this quick Sweet 16 Thursday best bets here at theoddsbreakers.com and the Odds Breakers podcast. We will be back tomorrow with Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk to talk more NCAA tournament and more at the Odds Breakers. Have a great rest of your week and go get some winners.